Welcome back, everybody. Sally has handed out in the space 2 pieces of paper to everybody, and these are the ones that I emailed out last night, so you have them. Hopefully you have them if you're not physically in the space. You don't need them, they're just useful to refer to. One is the Karaniya Metta Sutta, which I will refer to, and the other one is the 4 Brahmaviharas, which we will chant together, and I will also refer to that. So I am recording this talk, but I will not be recording discussion this afternoon. I am going to be talking about the Brahmaviharas, and specifically how important they are, and about really living the Brahmaviharas. We can make the Brahmaviharas our whole life. I first came across the Brahmaviharas largely in the manner of Sharon Salzberg's wonderful book, Loving Kindness, which is, it's just a very kind of a light, easy way to start practicing Buddhism. It's an easy way to start practicing mindfulness and meditation. We just hold these little loving kindness verses. And it's very lovely, and Sharon Salzberg did an amazing service to the world. She basically brought, as far as I can tell, she brought metta practice forward, and it's an amazing practice. But it is so much more than that. Metta practice, the Brahmaviharas, can be our whole practice. Everything is in the Brahmaviharas. The whole of awakening, the whole of our practice is embodied in the Brahmaviharas. So what I want to do today, I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to start talking about where they came from and sort of how they come into our practice, and a little bit of the history and evolution. And then I'm going to look at the 4 Brahmaviharas individually and together, at how they kind of come together as a whole. I'll land that in the Metta Sutta, which is the one you'll have in front of you, which superficially is about metta, but at a deeper level is about the Brahmaviharas and about this whole being. From there, we naturally move to that as just a concentration practice. And the recitation we'll do, the chant we'll do together, comes out of the sutras, where it is part of it's listed, that kind of language sits alongside the concentration practices, the jhanas. So that's where we're going to go today. We come across the Brahmaviharas and metta practice in particular as a Theravadan teaching, most particularly out of the insight tradition, but it is also used in the Tibetan tradition, and really it's the face of kindness. It is the whole of the Bodhisattva vows. So the Dalai Lama, I believe it was, said, "My religion is kindness." And that's it. Sounds kind of trite and silly at one level, but if you really let that sink in, my religion is kindness. If you recognize that wasn't a trite, silly, superficial statement, that was a deep statement of deep, profound faith. My religion is kindness. That's the whole thing. So the Brahmaviharas, they first show up, they do show up, they're not talked about a lot. Metta practice doesn't show up a lot really in the Pali Canon, but it is there. There is a text called the Patisambhidi Magga, which roughly translates to path of discrimination, which is in that 5th basket of suttas, the Kadika, I've forgotten the word, Kadika Nikaya, or something like that. It's that 5th basket, which includes the Theragatha, it includes the Dhammapada, it includes a whole bunch of these metta suttas in there. So that text incorporates the 4 Brahmaviharas with metta type practices, verses, practices for all of them. It's fairly terse and not very accessible. Buddhaghosa, who was the great systematizer in Sri Lanka in 4th, 5th century, wrote in his Visuddhimagga, which is the great seminal text, the Path of Perfection, he wrote a lot about the Brahmaviharas, metta practice, and so on in that text. They're out there, but they didn't really come forward, as far as I can tell, until maybe the first part of the 20th century, when it became a practice that was incorporated into the traditions in Myanmar, so the Burmese practices. And the early Sayadaws in Burma in that time frame, they started bringing it forward. And that's how it was then picked up by these Sharon Salzberg and others who were practicing in that tradition, and they brought it back from those teachers. So that, as you're familiar with metta practice, we start directing metta. We've got these very simple verses. May I be safe, may I be physically healthy, mentally healthy, have ease of well-being. Verses like that. And we start directing them to ourselves, and then we move out to neutral beings, people, loved beings, difficult beings, and then the world. So there's this practice of expanding radiation. The practices relating to the other Brahmaviharas look very similar. They start in different places. They probably don't start with the self. They start with a difficult person or an easy person. And the verses are a little different, but they're basically directionally the same kind of thing. But the way we use that practice, we normally just stop with metta. And candidly, when I first encountered it, I thought it was a fairly, it's great. And then it's like, okay, that's kind of as far as it goes. It's just not really very interesting anymore. And it's because of the way that I encountered it. It's the same, I encountered the same as a young man with Christianity. It didn't work for me because of the way it was packaged. Christianity is a really profound, it can be taken as a really deep, profound path of non-dual practice that leads to an awakening analogous to the waking that Buddha had, right? So, but it's the way it was packaged. It had these limits around it, so it didn't really work. But if we really look at it, those limits are humanly constructed limits. They're not really there in the practice. A story that many of you have heard me use before, but I can use it endlessly because I think it's wonderful. This comes out of Sayadaw U Pandita, and I suspect this is actually where Salzberg got them from. It's from this Sayadaw. He likens the 4 Brahmaviharas to a mother with 4 children. That's the way he approaches them in this particular analogy. He says, mother has a small infant, cradling this infant. The mother just wants that infant to grow up healthy and strong. That's metta, that's loving kindness. She's got a child who's 2 or 3 years old, and that child is a little sick, is bedridden. The mother just wants that child to get well. That's compassion, that's the second. Karuna, that's the second. And she has a teenager who's dating, who's doing well in her exams, who's got a lot of friends, who's on the sports teams, whatever. She's doing well and she's just happy, she's joyous. And the mother is radiating joy with her daughter, in sympathy with and in connection with her daughter. That's mudita, which we normally translate as sympathetic joy. And then she's got a child in his late 20s, married, a couple of young kids. Mother and father both gainfully employed, earning nice salaries, nice careers ahead of them. They've got a nice house, a nice part of town. Life's going well. Yeah, there are bumps, but life's going well. And they're adults. They can look after themselves and they can look after their kids. They don't need the mother to show up anymore. So the mother's relationship with those children, with her son, and with his family is of equanimity. Just there, strong support, strong presence, but not in any way involving herself in the lives, actively involving herself. And that's equanimity. So I find that a very lovely way of relating to these. They show up, interestingly, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And the Yoga Sutra, that's out of the Sanatana Dharma, which we usually refer to as the Hindu tradition. They were written probably 4th, 5th century, but they document a tradition that goes back and was probably a tradition contemporary with that of the Buddha, and these kind of co-evolved in northern India. So in that tradition, you have the 4 words, the same words, metta, and they're used together as the Brahmaviharas. The metta is friendship to those who are happy. Karuna is compassion to those who are in distress. So these are a little more focused than we normally encounter them, and I find that focus actually kind of helpful and clarifying. Metta is friendship to those who are happy. Compassion is to those who are in distress. Mudita, joy towards those who are virtuous. Equanimity, upekkha, is equanimity to those who are non-virtuous. So it's a slightly different landing, but it's a slightly different framework, but I find it a useful framework. So the chant you all have, the 4 boundless qualities, which we will refer to later, if you glance at that, you will see that the 4 words in there are not translated. You don't have to glance at it, but I'm just saying, if you were to glance at it, they're not translated. And they're not translated for a particular reason, for a very specific reason. It's because in the translation, we think we know what they mean. And I want to bring us back to before we think we know what these words mean. So metta, we're projecting metta, we're projecting loving kindness, which is a translation I've never really liked. It's got valences that just don't quite work to me. There's connotations for both of those words. I've seen it translated as goodwill. I've seen it translated as friendship. I like both of those better. What is it really about, though? I want people to be happy. It's simple. I just want people to be happy. I want you to be happy, and you to be happy, and you, and you, and you to be happy. It's all it is. And it's coming ultimately from the very depths of my heart, that I want you to be happy. And I want to be happy myself. It's for everybody. There's no higher, no lower, no equal, no superior or inferior. This is for all beings alike. I want you to be happy. It's just a wish for happiness. It's more than a wish. It's an energy towards creating happiness. Universal happiness. And I can relate that. I want to be happy, so I know you want to be happy. I can feel this. Maitreya, you've come across the name Maitreya. He is the future Buddha. Maitreya is also, in many Mahayana traditions, a Buddha of compassion. It's not just the future Buddha, it's specifically a Buddha of compassion. Maitreya, metta in Sanskrit, is Maitri. Maitreya literally means the metta one, translated perhaps as the compassionate one, the kind one, the friendly one. So this is identified as the very nature of the future Buddha. That's it. Nothing but metta. Nothing but wanting people to be happy. Living for people to be happy. Being in existence for people to be happy. Karuna, which we normally translate as compassion. What does that mean? It means I want beings to be free from suffering. It's an energy. I don't want to experience suffering. I don't want other beings to experience suffering. I want freedom from suffering. What is freedom from suffering? It's being happy, right? It's the same thing. It's just being happy. But in Buddhism, it has a deeper meaning. Buddha said, I teach 2 things. I teach suffering, and I teach the end of suffering. That's it. So karuna, the wish for beings to be free from suffering, that's the whole thing, right there. That's it. So when we practice compassion, we're practicing awakening for ourselves and for all beings. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. In the Sangha we say that every Sunday. That's the same thing. Every time we engage in compassion practice, we're engaging absolutely and fully in that first bodhisattva vow, in the whole of the Buddhist path. I want everybody to be happy and free from suffering. Mudita. Charlie actually pointed me at a talk, which is a really wonderful talk, with somebody who's very scholarly, among other things. He's a profound practitioner, but he's also very scholarly. And he was passing these words, and he says, mudita doesn't mean sympathetic at all. It normally comes to us as sympathetic joy. He says, it doesn't mean sympathetic at all. That root word does not mean sympathetic. And in the Patanjali's text, the Yoga Sutras, the translations I've come across there, sympathetic doesn't show up. It's just joy. And the valence of it is, when I encounter joy, I'm happy. It's not, I don't want this for myself. There's no jealousy, there's no enmity, there's no greed in there. There's just joy. When I feel joy, I echo it. When I'm joyous, I want other people to feel it too. It's a spreading of happiness. It's the same thing, right? I mean, these are all words surrounding the same thing, which is this universal happiness, universal awakening. It's just joy. When that teenage girl is dating and doing well in her exams and on the varsity teams and whatever else she's doing, and she's joyous, I'm joyous. The reason that Sayadaw U Pandita story works really nicely is because it's framed as family, as a mother relating to her children, so we don't naturally start slipping in this jealousy. We don't naturally slip in, oh, but that's somebody, I don't know if I really want them to be well, because I don't like them, I don't like what they're doing. And the encouragement is, that's the way we relate to everybody, right? It's universal. In this experience of the world, if I stub my toe, my left big toe, I reach down and nurse it. If I bump my left hand onto the wall, my right hand comes across and rubs it. It doesn't think, that's the right hand, what's that done for me later? They're the same thing. The family simile, metaphor, brings us into much closer proximity, so we feel closer. But the artificial separations we feel between ourselves and other people, they're artificial, and these are about making this universal. Just, I want people to be happy and free from suffering. Upekkha, same guy, his name I can't remember, otherwise I would tell you, but I can't remember his name. He says, Upekkha doesn't actually mean compassion, it doesn't actually mean equanimity. Upekkha simply means to look upon. So there's a dispassion in this looking upon. It's looking upon without being fazed by it, without being afflicted by it. So in the Patanjali version, Upekkha is equanimity to those who are non-virtuous. Mudita is joy with those who are virtuous. Easy, right? Maybe. But equanimity with those who are non-virtuous. This is being there with, but not being affected by. So this is talking to that, the mother and that son who's married with kids. It's not that she's not there, she is there. And the son knows she's there. And he knows she has always been a rock in his life. Always been there, somebody he can rely on, somebody who is steady in the storm. and she still is. Upekkha is being that stable place, creating safety for people. Just being solid and unperturbed, and radiating this kindness, this wish for everybody to be happy, out of that place of absolute stability. So you bring all this together, and what's this? These all work together. These are just faces of the same thing. These are all about wanting people to be happy, wanting people to be free from fear, free from suffering, and being that energy and that encouragement to create safe space and encourage others to move in that direction and help others. Maitreya again, right? The future Buddha. The future Buddha is wanting people to be happy. You are this is it. You can be the future Buddha if you just embody that. I want you to be happy. I want you to be free from suffering. What can I do to help make that happen? So I'm going to look just for a minute at the Metta Sutta. So the Metta Sutta, I'm not going to read it, but you have it in front of you. I'll read sections of it. There's a whole section at the top which is about a wonderful way to live. Very peaceful, a way of living that embodies this. And then the second verse is, think happy at rest. May all beings be happy at heart. This isn't just about metta, folks. This is about metta and karuna and mudita and upekkha. This is the whole thing. This is about truly wanting beings to be happy. And if you really want beings to be happy, you project that happiness. You're there with slightly different valence of energy when you're encountering suffering. You're there as that very stable, reliable, solid, dependable foundation to create a safe space for people. You're all of this. You're all of these faces of the four Brahmaviharas. We are all of these four faces of the Brahmaviharas. Skip the short verse, the long verse. As a mother would risk her life to protect her child, her only child, even so cultivate a limitless heart with regard to all beings. Cultivate a limitless heart. The limitless heart is this radiation, and this we'll chant that radiation together, but it's this practice of we start here and we expand and we radiate. But we do it with all four of the Brahmaviharas. And this is not about, as I would protect my child, I'll protect you and you and you. This is, as I protect my child, I protect, I care for that limitless heart. That limitless heart is metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. It's the whole thing. Again, it's not just this loving kindness as we encounter it. It's this whole wish for every being to be happy, every being to be free from suffering, every being to have an environment in which that is possible. Recognizing no being can be happy until every being is happy. That applies to me and it applies to everybody else. It doesn't compute. Can the left hand be happy if the right hand's got a knife sticking through it? Not really. Not really, not at all. So it's kind of, we're in this together, and it's about recognizing we're in it together and radiating this whole happiness, freedom from suffering everywhere. And then it goes on a little bit, and it says, as long as one is alert, don't see the line, but it's as long as one is alert, one should be resolved on this mindfulness. This is called the sublime abiding here and now. Sublime abiding is Brahmavihara, the home of Brahma, the big God, the real one. Sanatana Dharma Hinduism is a monotheistic faith, and Brahma is God. Which is the same as Buddha nature. It's the same as enlightened mind. So just this, being resolved on this mindfulness, embodying and being the four faces of the Brahmaviharas, just this is awakening. So now I'm going to step from there and bring this into specific practice thoughts. So most of you have encountered the jhanas over the years in various ways. For those who haven't, the jhanas, they're simply descriptions of markers, if you will, experiential thresholds as one settles into meditation, and things like happen, like as you settle in, you can have like a kundalini rush or a different rush of joy, and this is an energy that can just naturally show up, and it's there, and then you keep on settling and it goes away. There's chitter chatter going on in the mind all the time, but as you settle in, at some point that chitter chatter can just stop. And then you bobble back up and it starts again, and you bobble back down and it stops again. So these are markers, these are descriptions of ways of describing this settling into deeper and deeper meditation. The value of deeper and deeper meditation is, as we get calmer and stiller, that stillness allows us to become, for ourselves and others, this solid base, this upekkha, which creates safety for ourselves and for others' practice, right? So and that being calm allows us to see more clearly what's going on, what's confusing us and distracting us, and as that happens, we can more comfortably let that go once we see through that, which allows us to settle even more and see even more clearly that the left hand and the right hand are actually one thing. So there's a practical reason for talking about these absorption states. If you go back and you read the Pali Canon, you will find in a lot of places there's a sutra, and Buddha talks, somebody asks a question, and Buddha gives an answer to the question, and then he moves on from there to talk about the jhanas. And the jhanas, in the definitional manner of the lists in the Pali Canon, the jhanas are simply the definition of right concentration. So if you look at the Noble Eightfold Path, right view is simply the Four Noble Truths. Right effort is cultivating skillful behaviors, not cultivating unskillful ones, and maintaining, and it's all about these there's four efforts, right? Bringing to full, holding up, pushing down, and not allowing to arise, the skillful and unskillful. When you go through those kind of things, you get to the right concentration. It just lists the four jhanas, or the 8 jhanas. I get into the immaterial ones too. But in a lot of those sutras, after talking about the 4 jhanas, Buddha then goes on and simply talks through the passage we're going to recite together, or something very similar to this passage. So we've done concentration, and then we do this. It's because it is a concentration practice. It's because if we really embody this and we really practice with this, this settles the mind. This brings calmness to us. This brings peace to us and to our environment. This allows precisely that same settling that means distractions arise less often, that allows us to see more clearly when distractions do arise and interact with those distractions in a more skillful way, encouraging them to not interfere as much with us. So that practicing the Brahmaviharas, whether we recite the verses or whether we just simply embody loving kindness, embody, I should say metta, embody karuna, and we just feel metta, we feel the desire for happiness for ourselves and for other people. Right? So this, it really is a concentration state. And unexpectedly to me, I have had some of my, let's just say transformational, I'm not sure what the right word is, some of my deepest insights perhaps, on retreats when I was just practicing metta. It's like I was on a retreat about a year ago, and there was a lot of, it was not a very good container, let's just put it that way. It was a retreat without a very good container, which means there's a lot of noise going on, there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of people coming and going and clumping around in the entrance and all the rest of it. It's just, how do you settle in that? And I'm used to just settling in with my breath. But, well, I'll give myself something a little stronger. So I just did self-metta. I just, for 2 or 3 days, I just practiced self-directed metta. And as I say, I just out of that unexpectedly, just one of the more profound, somebody at one point the bell was rung, and that just set me off for like half a day. Just this wave of energy moving and just insight, if you will. So metta is really, well, the Brahmaviharas are really meaningful, profound, deep, and they are a concentration practice. And if we take them on, we can, they're a yana, a vehicle that takes us the whole way. So, I'd encourage you to look at the Brahmaviharas, to explore them yourselves and find a way to make them a meaningful practice. Now a little later today, I'll actually read this to you so you know it when it's coming. I have, this is a metta practice, so so you sit in meditation and somebody reads the metta verse to you, metta lines to you, you kind of go through it with them. That's a practice many of you are going to be familiar with. It's a kind of guided meditation. I have 8 lines here which are from Lisa, which you don't have, but these are the ones that I use mostly, and they're from my teacher Lisa Ernst. I'm going to just read them and see if you notice what I'm going to tell you at the end as I read it. May you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you be free from fear. May you be healthy in body and mind. If you cannot be healthy in body and mind, may you be at peace with whatever comes. May you be held in compassion. May you be filled with loving kindness. May your suffering be a kind and wise teacher. May you find joy and equanimity in this present moment, just as it is. The thing that I was looking for you to maybe catch is in the last 4 lines, which say, may you be held in compassion, may you be filled with loving kindness. So it's karuna, and metta in that order. May your suffering be a kind and wise teacher. May you find joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, in this present moment, just as it is. So I didn't realize when I started using this verse and found that I really, really liked it, that the reason I really, really like it includes the fact that it embodies the 4 Brahmaviharas. It's not just metta. Because metta practice, Brahmavihara practice, isn't just metta. And the whole thing's there. And this, it's the whole thing right here. That's your complete guide to awakening, right there. So more traditionally, you're going to use the 4 lines, but I'd encourage you, and I did this in that longer retreat I was talking about, I just had the 4 lines, but as I was working with them, I was tweaking them to make them really fit with me, and I was keeping the spirit of metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. That was clearly the spirit and intent of the practice. So I was keeping that, and I was keeping it directed to body and mind. But I was playing with them in a way that really landed for me. So I'd encourage you, if you do use the verses, and you can all find different versions of verses, to use them and tailor them to yourselves. And also, one of the things about concentration practice and practice in general is not to jump around a lot. So more broadly in our practice, if something's a little off, if you're finding it difficult to settle in or whatever, adjust, try something different. Instead of following your breath, do metta. Instead of doing metta, follow your breath. Take on a koan, do something different. But don't do it for a weekend or for half an hour, do it for 6 months. You've got to give it a chance to work. Otherwise we're just hopping around and not letting anything settle. So I have found the same to be true with the Brahmaviharas. And so for that longer experience, as I told you, I was doing just self-directed metta for 2 or 3 days. Culturally that doesn't feel right to us because it's not right to think of ourselves all the time. But I'm you and you're me. It's the same thing. It's just another way of pointing at the same thing. And it's easier for me to do the work here. So landing it here to start with actually makes sense. But you can land it wherever you like. But the point is, it's okay and probably actually beneficial to not be jumping around saying, well, I've done that to myself 4 times, so now let me do it to somebody else 4 times, and I'm running out of time, so I'll do 3 here and 3 there. It's okay to just stay in one place. And in fact, I think it's probably beneficial to just stay in one place. It's okay and maybe beneficial to just pick one of your 4 lines and stick with the one line, because it's a concentration practice. It's something that you really want to soak in and settle in. It's not something you want to skim about with, skirt around on. You want it to really settle in, and the best way to settle in is to take the small pieces very seriously. When a distraction arises, when we're in our breath, the way I generally approach something that is increasingly, it's avoid getting engaged in content, see it as a phenomenon, and there's all sorts of little, don't look directly at it, but these are all when you're anchored on a breathing or just a presence practice. When you're working with the lines, with line or lines from Brahmavihara practice, the relationship is more likely to be something like, I've been talking about the relationship between my breathing and the phenomenon, right? That's how I'm working with that. But if I'm working with metta lines or karuna lines, it's the relationship between that and what's arising. So there's a relationship between metta or upekkha or mudita or karuna and what's arising. And there's a merging that happens there, or a dissolving that can happen there. What's arising may you be filled with loving, may you be held in compassion, may you be filled with loving kindness. There's a way that can relate to whatever is arising. Right, so we're bringing that into our Brahmavihara practice. So, yeah, it's a shift in the way we relate to hindrances, disturbances, because we're landing in this radiating loving kindness, radiating compassion practice. So, I think that's what I have for you. So what we did today was cover a little bit of the history of the Brahmaviharas and context and the practice we're used to, which is largely this metta practice. And I hope what I succeeded in doing, what I tried to do and I hope I succeeded in doing, was expanding an understanding that it's not just metta, it's all the Brahmaviharas, and expanding and deepening the meaning of what that shares, so that we can see this is our whole practice. This is the whole path to awakening. And to give you just a couple of tools that you can use to embody that practice. So I encourage you to explore that in your practice for the rest of the day. I'm going to sign off on the recording in a moment, and then we'll chant this thing together, and then we'll return to our practice. We're not going to do anything more with the Metta Sutta today, so that's just for your reference. Take it with you, whatever, leave it behind. And then sometime this afternoon I'll go through that guided meditation of the loving kindness Metta practice. So that is, let me push a couple of buttons here.